Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about marriage and human relationships. That's a very basic part of our human experience, as well as our cultural and civilization is concerned. Um, these are important uh, part of our livelihood. They're also part of our the health of our civilization and the culture we live in. Um, why does this happen? Why do we have relationships in the first place? Primarily going to be talking about the more traditional, boy versus girl relationship. Obviously, if homosexuals are certainly would be inclusive in this discussion, but just for the sake of clarity, I'm going to stick primarily with between men and women. Um, uh, Procreation is the first thing that comes to mind. Biology installs in us um, this design to keep the species going, and that's a fundamental and important part, and very obvious part. We all kind of know this. But as humans versus other mammals, that we know there's a lot more to it than that. And there are two ways in which we express our sexuality ongoing. We can have a more, uh, you know, go through promiscuity, where we have several relationships, where we don't really settle on one. And then, of course, there's more of a traditional approach, where we give the relationship time to nurture, time to understand the other person we're interested in before we get into sexual activities with them. Uh, Promiscuity has some detrimental effects, certainly more to females than to males. Males certainly benefit from getting their sexual desires achieved faster, but it does nothing to nurture the relationship. And studies have shown that it has more harmful effects on women. Women who often have several relationships with men tend to exhibit the same kind of symptoms as PTSD in a single event on a woman. Um, it's very difficult for women in this category to um, get established in a meaningful relationship and to trust that relationship. So that's one of the advantages of going a more traditional approach. Whether we like it or not, the studies seem to suggest that. Because typically, in a traditional sense, the male will plan the date, so to speak, particularly initially, cover the costs of the date, and will actually plan the events for the date. And the women tends to respond to that either favorably or unfavorably, and it either continues or it doesn't. But typically, what the male is trying to do is trying to earn the female's trust. That's the important factor that the male is, at least a good man, is going to try to instill in this interest that he has. The fundamentals actually starting an effective relationship. And I'm going to move away from relationships that we see today are basically on material. There's this scope in which people think that the male has to be more successful than the female. And in either case, a successful woman, let's say, makes $250,000, will marry or seek a mate that makes $500 million. This is not what going to be my focus today, because I think that's almost like a contractual type of relationship. But I'm really more concerned today about the fundamental, even spiritual, mentoring kind of, nurturing kind of relationship that I think speaks highly of our human endeavors and the more important things in life than just achievements. I don't like to look at a relationship as being a collection of trophies for ourselves. I try to look at a lot more, deeper than that. Um, when we look for relationships, we certainly don't want to have a relationship where a person is hostile, angry, abusive, violent. And the first thing that comes to mind is, well, that's something a male is going to be doing. There are women that are quite violent. They can be abusive as well. So, I don't want to be cornering that this is just one sex that's responsible for this. This is mutual. Because when you have those kind of negative issues coming into the relationship, it's probably not going to work out. And if anything, if people of that nature come together, their hostilities will come out, and it would have been better if they never even got together. So we need those good fundamentals as a foundation. Next thing is values. Values are very important. Probably the most important thing that you can bring in a relationship is that you have a positive image of yourself. Without that, you're also going to be, even if you have the foundations, if you don't feel good about yourself, you're not going to, that image is going to be expressed in many ways. And the person you're interested in is going to lose trust, is going to lose confidence in the relationship. And if you feel in yourself that you are not happy, and you're thinking the relationship's going to make you happy, that's a false premise right off the start. Relationships don't make you happy. They make people who are happy happier in the process. If you got to settle those issues first before you really get serious in a relationship. And your values also include just the basic fundamentals, your interests, what you like, what you don't like, what you believe in. It could be you share the same religion, you could say same politics, but it doesn't always mean that way. But there are certain things that you can do together that you can share mutually and openly. And even if you disagree with certain things, that's in itself. But you enjoy that engagement. Then that can be actually a commonality. You don't have to be the same politics, but if you're respectable to each other, then it'll work. Another example is if you, let's say your female girlfriend likes to shop and you don't, but you both enjoy taking long walks together and talking. And you like sports and she doesn't. Well, I mean, obviously you have those long walks and talking, and maybe you like to go out and eat sushi at restaurants, and these are the kinds of things that can complement. And maybe over time she'll get interested in the sports that you like, and that you'll actually start enjoying going shopping or activities like that. Doesn't always work that way, but that's fine as long as you're coming together on certain very essential things. If you have nothing in common, then it's never going to go off the ground. Then the fundamental thing comes to mind is, how do you fall in love? And again, this is where I separate from the popular notion of finding the right person in your life for material gain. Love is a very different thing. I believe love involves soul, and we've often heard that we have souls, and we are finding our soul mate. And how do we find a soul mate in our lives? It's very difficult, because I believe there are positive and negative externalities. The positive externalities are expectations, either expectations for wealth or security, whether this person has a good job or not, whether you're thinking about having children in a house, and all these other kinds of things that come into your mind. It's more of a problem when you become when you're dating someone who's a little bit older, and now the biological clock is ticking. This can make a situation where you may be impulse to drive a relationship together because of that, and that could be a very big mistake. The negative externalities are good examples are you're very shy. Maybe you had some sort of abusive relationship in your past. A person certainly who was raped or molested, they're bringing those externalities in. So even if a person comes into a healthy relationship, but they can't recognize it because they're bringing that burden with them. And that is a problem that often requires a lot of love and a lot of attention to, sometimes professional help. But if you have those but what they do is they distort your reality of what's actually happening. And that is, you've actually found your soulmate, but you don't realize it. You've actually come together, but you don't know this. The easiest way to know is if you don't have these two positive and negative externalities. The ideal situation is if you are not looking for somebody, and all of a sudden someone shows up and you feel a change in yourself. And that change might be that you fall in love with that person, and hopefully it's mutual. But if they have any of those positive and negative externalities, that could distort the whole process on that person, and make it more difficult for them to recognize it. So I'm going to pause here. I'm going to do another part in my next video. Take care.